All right, excellent. Thank you very much. This is the June 20th meeting of the Economic Development Commission. We have 1, 2, 3. The phone number, is that a member of the commission, or is that a member of the public, or who's that? Do we know?
I think that's Lane Watson. I think he's having some problem with his audio.
Perfect. Okay. All right. So we have 4, which I think we have an 8-person commission currently. I think we have 1 opening. Is that correct? So would 4 constitute a quorum?
I'm not the authority on this, but I think so.
All right. I'm pretty sure.
If 8 is a full complement and we have 4, it would be considered a quorum.
Oh,
Yeah, because we don't have the 9th person. That there is no 9th member, so there is only 8 members currently. So, all right, that makes it. Well, we're gonna go, and if we have to ask for absolution later, we'll do that later. Oh, there's Nancy. Now we're definitely good. Perfect. All right, first item on the agenda is approval of our March minutes. I was absent for that meeting, but if someone else would like to make the motion to approve the minutes.
I can motion to approve the minutes.
Thank you, Nancy. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Valessa. Any further discussion on the minutes from the March meeting? Then all those in favor, please say aye or raise your hand. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Nancy is abstaining. All right, so moved. I don't believe we have any members of the public here for public comment, so we'll move into a couple of things for reports. Most of this is on the agenda for placekeeping purposes. I don't think we've had subcommittee meetings since our last meeting, so I don't believe there are any subcommittee reports unless somebody has something they want to bring up at the moment. All right, great. And I know Kathleen is double booked. She's also running the event on the town square right now. I don't believe we have a staff update. Is that correct, Rosemary? All right. Does anyone have any business openings or closings to report? Okay, perfect. And then we will.
Well, I don't know what's going on next door to me.
Yeah, so it sounds like maybe Toast is temporarily or permanently closed. Gotcha.
Not sure.
We'll keep that on the radar and try to confirm that as well. And I don't believe we have any changes to the calendar. So with that, we'll turn it over to Jennifer, who's going to give us a housing update. So Jennifer, the floor is yours.
Okay, great. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Jennifer Kaufman. I'm Director of Planning and Development for the town of Mansfield. And I'm going to share my other screen. Let's see here. There we go. Can everyone see my screen? Okay, great. So we generally, whenever there's a large or a major regulatory change, the Planning and Zoning Commission refers this out to the Economic Development Commission. And so right now, we did refer out these new draft multifamily housing regulations. And so generally the Economic Development Commission would provide a statement that would be incorporated into the record of the public hearing for the Planning and Zoning Commission to hear or to consider as part of their public hearing record. So just to a little bit of a background, recently approved developments. I know you're all very aware that we've had a lot of activity happening in Mansfield over the past few years. And basically since 2020, we have approved 811 units of multifamily housing and 1,165 bedrooms of a group dwelling. So I used to talk about this as 1,261 units of overall housing, but you really need to look at them differently because there are 811 units of really apartment style complex, and then there's a private dorm that was approved, essentially a private dorm on King Hill Road on both sides of the dorm, both side of the road. So this includes, these approvals include 91 affordable and 34 low income and 36 workforce housing units. So as part of the zoning regulations, there is a mandatory affordable housing requirement set aside, and they can meet the requirements by either doing a set aside or paying a fee in lieu. We also, as a result of these, have almost $5 million in our Affordable Housing Trust Fund. So how did we get here? We have, every town, every 10 years has to do a plan of conservation and development, as many of you probably know. And back in 2015, that is our last POCD, there were several community design concepts. And those were things like locate the parking to the side and rear of buildings, incorporate multiple building types, wrap parking garages with the buildings, provide focal points for units such as a central green, incorporate stormwater as a site amenity, and incorporate natural features into the design amenities. This is just sort of very high level. There were also other things, we obviously have water and sewer that came to the Four Corners. So we did understand that there would be development coming to this area. So this is what we got. The first development that everyone is very well aware of, if you've driven down 195, is the Standard at Four Corners. This is 392 units, 25.9 units an acre. So the zoning for this is it's within a planned business zone. Our existing zoning regulations permit 15 units per acre. There's 23.33 total acres and 15 acres of developable land. They were able to get those 25.9 units per acre because we allow for density bonuses. The applicant applied and was awarded all of the density bonuses available. And those density bonuses were for structured parking, the parking garage that is now wrapped by a building, and then sustainability measures. So they got an additional 8 units or 8 units per acre are allowed and up to 15 bedrooms. And then for affordable housing, they got an additional 2.91 units per acre by paying a 1.7 million fee in lieu of having the affordable units on site. So in total, at this development, there's out of the 392 units, 35 are affordable, and that means that they're available to 80 households earning 80% or below of area median income. And then our regulations require that there's a workforce component. So 5% of the units have to be workforce. And that is at these available to households earning 120% of area median income. Now these are restricted. So it's not like, and they have to file a restriction of covenants on the land records and how they're going to qualify people. And that lasts for a period of 40 years. And that counts towards our inventory of affordable housing that is the Connecticut Department of Housing tracks. The next development is the Hub at Mansfield, and that's, if you're familiar with TEDS, that's located there. The total acreage there is 3.65, total developable acres is 2.83, and the density here is 411.7 bedrooms per acre. So this site, again, it's on both sides of North Eagleville Road with a portion fronting on King Hill Road. There were no on-site affordable units. Instead, these applicants will pay a 3.3 million fee in lieu that will be collected when the zoning permit is filed. The next development is, they don't have a fancy name yet. It's called 497 Middle Turnpike, and that's the site of the former golf course on Route 44. And that is 261 units. There in total, there are about 30 acres of developable land, and the density is 8.6 units per acre. This development seems a little bit more dense, however, because all the units are clustered on the southerly 15 acres. But there is 22 acres of permanently preserved open space. So this is sort of an aerial shot of this development, and that if you look at the satellite imagery with the trees, that northerly portion will all be preserved open space, and that little polygon that's in there, that's actually town-owned land that is currently open space. So again, 22 acres from that development next to 6.64 acres of town open space. The next development is Eagleville Green, and that is on South Eagleville Road. That is a project of the nonprofit arm of the Mansfield Housing Authority. That is 42 units or 12.7 units per acre. They're a permitted 15 units per acre in that zone, and they have 3.3 acres of developable land. And now the density is always calculated on the developable acreage, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. So this is a sort of an aerial view of Eagleville Green. You can see that, you know, that there are units that are fronting along what is currently now their stormwater detention basin, but will be a dry basin. It will be planted with native plants. This is a mixed income development. 34 of the 42 units are low income units, which means that they are available and restricted for households earning 60% or less of area median income. And the remaining 8 units are market rate. And the final development that has been approved, I see a question. Steve, do you want to?
Just one quick question with those units, are those to be occupied exclusively by people who work in Mansfield, or can they work anywhere in Connecticut and live in those units?
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt you.
No worries at all. They, you know, per fair housing, we can't require someone to be like a Mansfield resident and qualify for these affordable units. They have to do a fair housing marketing plan, and they have to market to what we call those least likely to apply. So it will be kind of broadcast, but essentially, you know, when we're building affordable housing, you want places so that people can live and work in the same place. So there's a lot of people, a lot of teachers, for example, for, you know, first year teachers, people at work who work at UConn who would qualify for these units. And we really want to make sure that we want to attract people who live and work in Mansfield, and, you know, people who might be looking to Mansfield for other reasons, school systems, or because they have close by family or whatever. So, and that goes to not just for Eagleville Green, but for all of the units that are deemed affordable that we're talking about. So then the final development that I'm going to talk about is the Villages at Four Corners, and that is the vacant area that is now occupied by Hops 44, Mike's Pizza, Dunkin', and the gas station. Those businesses will remain. I think there was a little bit of a question out there as to whether or not those buildings were going to be demolished. And to my knowledge, I've not heard anything, and they've always talked about the fact that those existing businesses will remain. So this is 116 units or 14 units per acre. It's immediately adjacent to the Standard at Four Corners. There will be sidewalks that could go from the entire frontage of the Standard all the way up to Four Corners, with the exception of the fact that there's a wetland that separates the Villages and the Standard. So what we've done is we've worked with both the Villages and the Standards, and we've kind of set that sidewalk in to cross the wetland at its most narrow point, but it will be essentially a sidewalk, but not quite right on the road. Let's see here. There are 17 affordable units and 6 workforce units. And I guess the reason why I talk about the affordable units is that it shows that it's, it's going to be a way for us to diversify the kind of audience who lives in these buildings. I think many of these developments are developed by people like Landmark Student Housing. So they're going to have to qualify these folks, not just the students who are, relying upon their parents' income will not be able to qualify to live in these units. So they have to do a number of different other qualifications.
Jen, can I just ask you a question about that parking lot there? Because that directly affects me. So it comes straight through, but not into the parking lot. So there's there's a roadway and it can either go right or left. I was under the impression that it was going to come directly into the parking lot of where oh no.
So they will, yes, there is entry from both 44 and 195. And the entry is closer to the standard on 195, but there will be an entryway from 44. It's not shown, let's see, Storrs Road. Yeah, you can see the entry if you look at that aerial photo. It's to the portion right near the standard, and then you can see a little entryway right next to the hops. That existing entryway will remain.
Okay, so
oh, and actually there's also an exit, I apologize, close to where the existing buildings are.
so from what I was under the impression, like when I'm looking at this to the left near
Yeah.
the standard, you can only take a right out of that, or is that going to change that you can take a right and a left?
I believe you'll only be able to take a right, but I'm going to have to check on the site plan for you, and I'm happy to talk to you offline on that.
Yeah, I'm just concerned with our parking lot and people coming through and using it as a cut through, because it's going to get very congested
Yeah.
in that section. And I know that there's talk about other roundabouts and things like that, but I mean, when I come up early in the morning, I'm already backed up.
Yeah.
So, okay.
This is the plan that was approved. It did go through engineering review that was peer reviewed. There definitely will be more traffic in this area. But when the traffic engineers reviewed this, they felt that they look at what is called level of service, and they felt, or they, per their traffic engineering standards and how they evaluate these things, they said that the level of service would not significantly decrease. So, so there we are. Let's see, next slide. So where are we now? Last August, the Planning and Zoning Commission enacted a temporary and limited moratorium on all developments in excess of 5 total acres with an average density greater than 3 units per acre. So that means that since August, we have not been accepting any new applications. Now, there were the Villages, 497, and the Hub were all approved after that moratorium, but their applications had been received. So we have a moratorium, and when you enact a moratorium, you have to give a really clear reason, and it has to be temporary and limited in scope. And our reason was to just really take a step back, look at our plan of conservation and development, and look at and hear from the community as to what type of housing they wanted to see, and make sure that we were getting housing for a diversity of people, housing for multi-generational housing. So on January 4th, I know the EDC members were all invited to this, and I believe some of you attended. We did, working with our consultant, Tyking Planning and Policy Group, we did have a workshop, and we had breakout groups, and we kind of heard from our advisory committees as to what folks wanted to see, what they liked, what they didn't like. And since that time, the Planning and Zoning Commission has been working very hard on developing new regulations in advance of the expiration of this moratorium. So tonight, I wanted to kind of give you a background, and tonight I'm gonna, this next portion of my presentation is to go over what these new regulations are and how the Planning and Zoning Commission, if they're approved, will move forward with approving new multifamily development. So it's a new regulation. It's designed to replace our existing multifamily regulations in their entirety. It's called the Planned Housing Design District, and it will be applicable to developments containing more than 6 units. There will be several different housing types that are permitted. Single family detached, and those are with a square footage not to exceed 1,500 square feet. The thought is that we wanted to see some more in this area, some more smaller homes that would be attractive to people at different stages of their life cycle. Duplexes, multiplexes, a single building containing 3 to 6 unassociated dwelling units, and then, an apartment complex or building. So then when you're writing the
Jennifer,
regulation,
sorry to interrupt, on that previous slide there, single family, so you're single family detached, you're talking about like a subdivision?
well, it could be a subdivision, but really it's more like it's going to be more condos, or kind of a cottage style is what we're envisioning here.
And
So
what
this
would the form of ownership be? Would it be like individually owned or like rental properties?
can be whatever. I mean, we can't dictate the form of ownership from the town, but we're trying to write regulations that hopefully we get some more owner occupied product out there, because right now we do have a lot of product that is really for renters.
Okay,
And
thank you.
I see someone with their hand up.
Yeah. Just out of curiosity, why can't you dictate that? And I'm asking just purely because I don't understand what would prevent you from sort of, making development contingent upon owner occupancy a condition of some development projects.
Well, I think that would go back to like our inherent property rights, and I could have our attorney discuss this a little bit further, but with the, when you own a property, you have the right to rent that property. So in Mansfield, obviously we have a very strong rental market because of the university. So we've done certain things, like if you have what we call an accessory dwelling unit, either the principal dwelling or the accessory dwelling has to be owner occupied for 6 months out of the year. But it's we have very limited tools by which we can force people to not rent their house, because basically if I might want to move somewhere, we all might, right, and have the ability to rent our house. So I think we've looked at a lot of tools so that we could kind of not prohibit it but regulate it, and it's very challenging. So
Are you saying that there are federal laws that prevent that from happening? In other words, you might not be able to prevent what someone does with their house once they own it, but a development plan could be built around the idea that the people who are building the houses are building them for the purpose of sale as opposed to the purpose of rental, right? I mean, in other words, I realize that once they're sold, that each individual owner could conceivably rent out. But I think what I'm wondering about is just a little bit different, which is making development contingent upon the development of units that are put up for sale.
I don't even think you could do that. The one thing we can do is we can encourage a form of housing that someone would want to buy, right? So, I've asked that question all along when all of these developments were being approved. Like, is it possible to to force them to have condos, for example, right? So that would be an owner occupied product that we can't dictate that. I've talked with our attorney about that. And so I have investigated that. Steve, as a realtor, you may be able to speak to that. I'm not sure.
I know, I believe, one of the towns around here, and I don't know if it's Mansfield or not, like, you can only have so many people in a rental property. If it's,
Yeah.
is that Mansfield or is that Ashford or? Okay,
We have what we call a definition of family. So you basically can only have three unrelated.
Right.
If it was registered with our housing department prior to 2010, then you can have 4. So the rule is 3 or 4, no more. But obviously, you have to be really careful about that, and it's hard to enforce. So, like there are families with 10 kids, right? So, but we do try to do that through our definition of family, but it's definitely challenging. And, frankly, we've never been taken to court on that, but we'd have to kind of, our attorney believes that it wouldn't be overturned, but that the jury's still out there.
thank you.
All right. Any other questions before?
Yeah, I just have one follow-up. I mean, I'm sort of coming to this, with I have no background in the legal side of this, but as a employee of UConn, I mean, what I can tell you is that one of the things that plagues that community is really the lack of ownership opportunities, and that's especially true now when you see so many houses being bought up by local and not so local real estate outfits to rent these houses out. And that's proving a real, I think a real barrier to the success of a lot of local businesses, particularly in the summertime and during the breaks when the students decamp. And while I understand and completely defer, to the legal experts on this, I think that it's really important when thinking about, future development that, ownership opportunity is prioritized. And if, I find it, I would be astonished if, for example, someone were to put in an application to build apartment units, for example, and the town were to say, well, we really don't want more apartment units. What we want are, owner occupied units. And that's what we would be willing to approve. That's what we would be willing to authorize for the purpose of the well-being, the overall economic well-being of the town and the community. So I don't know. I just think that's a really important part of this. I think that just the increased number of beds is fantastic, a huge achievement, an absolute necessity in the community. But I think at this point, ownership of housing is really critical to the future of Mansfield. Moreover, looking at the way that a lot of UConn is going with increasing number of students being attracted to the Hartford campus and the Stanford campus, I think putting all of our chips in the rental basket is really a dangerous thing to do. If we can do something to promote longer term embedded membership and participation in the community, it'd be a good idea from an economic standpoint. But I know this, I'm just talking out loud here, and I just wanted to share it.
Sure. No, I 100% agree. And I do think, Mansfield for its size, we have a lot of rentals here. We just do. And I know that we've looked at that. The Northwest Mansfield plan is we're trying to pull out some ways to shift that renter owner balance, because a healthy community, there is sort of the sweet spot of the owner rental balance. So looking at tools to do that is really important. Through zoning, you can just say you don't want multifamily, but we do kind of need some multifamily. So it's a tough nut to crack. It would, other than prohibiting multifamily, and that's not, I think that we would still get a lot of single family homes that are rented, just for.
I'm going to jump in real quick, Jennifer, because I know I see a lot of hands go up, and I know everybody has a lot of questions. So I'm going to call on Valesta and then Tony, because that was the order that they raised their hands. But then I'm going to ask if everybody pauses their questions so Jennifer can get through her presentation, because I think she probably has a lot of good stuff to tell us. And I know we all have a lot of want to have a robust discussion. So, but Valesta, you're first, then Tony, and then we're going to get back to the presentation.
Because if I'll hold my question, my questions are more just curiosity about low income, like who holds it and like, do you put families in amongst students? And like, I'm very curious, but it's not really, we don't need to go down this road right now. So Tony, I'll pass it to you.
Tony,
I just wanted to say that the town has been really trying to figure this dilemma out too. And one of the things that we have been hoping is that all of these apartment houses that are opening right around campus will serve a rental need for people who work and or study on campus. And it will open up some of the single family houses that have been converted into rental units. But that doesn't take for a large number of people. That doesn't really change the town in any substantial way. I will also point out that when we built the downtown, the intention was that those buildings would be condo units. And in the end, the banks would not fund owner-occupied housing. And what was built was, because the market here is not condos, the market here is for rentals. And the banks, want their money to go into successful projects. So they just were not funding that kind of development. And what we know is, and in college towns all over the country, what is being built is student housing of one sort or another. What Jennifer and her committees have done is to force developers to build houses, build buildings that will be suitable for families or for retirees when the time comes, and hopefully there will be mixed usage. By the way, the older people who live in downtown stores just love it. They don't mind being around younger people that much. So maybe we'll find some more of those.
all right, we'll turn
Tony's
it back
referring
over
to
Jennifer.
the existing regulations that have, there's a multi-generational component to those. So a certain percent of those, of the units, we can't dictate who's going to live there, but they have to be built in a way that people at varying stages in their lifestyle would want to live there. So, so that said, all of our multifamily regulations are going to be repealed, but you're going to see how we're trying to incorporate that in this new regulation. So just want to kind of go through this. So let's see. I think so. This is the project siting criteria. These parcel locations are probably gobbledygook because you probably haven't memorized the zones like I have. But the SER HO zone, that is the South Eagleville Road Housing Opportunity Zone. That is the area really immediately adjacent to Eagleville Green. You can get up to this is maximum density that this proposed regulation is stating, 15 units per developable acre, and it has to be on an arterial or collector road. The PB zones, we have 5 planned business zones. And you can have any of the housing types up to 15 units per developable acre, again, on an arterial or collector road. The PVRA is the Pleasant Valley Residential Agriculture Zone, and that is the area in southern Mansfield that is adjacent to the Eastern Ball Field. We've allowed multifamily there for many years. We have not gotten any, and I think part of it is because of the zoning. So there you could have 8 units per developable acre. And then this zone, and you're going to find out how it gets landed in a minute, can be landed in all of our other zones, provided you have 5 acres, provided you use this housing type. This is, a single family duplex, or a multiplex is 3 to 6 units. You have to be on an arterial or collector road. If you are a multiplex, you have to be also identified as compact residential on our future land use map, which is part of the plan of conservation and development. And I put in red here, no density bonuses are permitted in these regulations. I think we heard a lot about that folks weren't really happy with that. So that has been removed in the draft reg. Oops. Let's see. All right, just because I'm talking about a lot of things that people don't have the arterial streets and collector streets memorized. Arterial streets are mainly our state roads. They're the larger roads like 195, Route 6, 275. Collector streets are just what they sound. They're designed, and the streets that kind of collect traffic. So there are larger, like the Browns Road, Atwoodville, Hunting Lodge, Moulton, portion of Birch, Maple. So those are the different streets, and we'll be using those street classifications as citing criteria. All right, just a little bit. I wanted to bring up the zoning map so that you guys could kind of understand a little bit about the zones. The orange and the brown, those, or the orange and the kind of beige, those are our residential zones. The red is our resident 20. So most of our town is zoned rural agriculture residential 90,000 square feet, which is approximately 2 acres. So that means that you have to have 2 acres in order to build a house. The way to read a zoning map in general, except for this purple here, because those are our flood hazard zones, is the darker the area, the kind of the more intense of the intense of the zone. So the red areas, the dark green, those are a lot of the pink, that's our planned business zones. All right, so just a little bit about how we're going to calculate developable area. So as I said before, the density will be based on your developable area. And we'll take our total site acreage, we'll exclude certain areas like wetlands and water courses, things with a utility easement or a conservation easement, land with steep slopes. And then, you're not going to be able to double dip. If you have a parcel with a commercial space on it now, you're going to have to set that land out. So total acreage of land currently or planned to be set aside for non-residential development. And you take the total site acreage, total area of land excluded above, and that's how you calculate your developable area. All right, so the process steps is for to land this planned housing design district. It's different from how we approve development now. If you're not a zoning nerd, it can be a little bit challenging. So I'm happy to answer any questions, but basically in order to land this zone, you will need to come up with a master development plan and then come in with a zone change application. Through that process, that's when you're going to have a public hearing. Prior to even getting to that point, you're going to come to staff. They're going to talk to you about how this type of application works. They're going to give the applicant our plan of conservation and development. And the applicant, if they're going to be successful, is going to really need to understand our town through a lot of the different planning documents that have been vetted by the public. So then they're going to be strongly encouraged to come to the Planning and Zoning Commission. We cannot require them by statute to come to the Planning and Zoning Commission for a conceptual development review. Then at that point, like I said before, they're going to have a master development plan and they'll come in with a zone change application. There'll be a public hearing where people can come out, talk to the Planning and Zoning Commission, weigh in, and give their feedback. There will then be a commission decision. If the commission approves this master development plan and zone change, then the applicant will come forward with a site plan application. A site plan application is a more streamlined application form than what we've been using before. So the thought is that the developer comes in, they understand our community, they do a development plan, they iron out a lot of those details, then they can spend a lot of their money, which is very expensive to do a lot of that engineering by doing their site plan. They come to the Planning and Zoning Commission with their site plan application, and we say no public hearing. The Planning and Zoning Commission can always have a public hearing, but the thought is that if that master plan was approved along with that zone change, they would have a site plan. The Planning and Zoning Commission would say you met everything in the master plan, or you didn't, and then they would decide. So it's a lot of front end work where you can have a dialogue where you're really expecting the applicant to understand the town. If they're doing everything that they say they're going to do, then we want to let them get an approval. So as part of your master plan, there's a number of different design considerations that you have to work through. That's site design and orientation, neighborhood connections, and these are outlined in like 3 pages with many bullet points. Parking location and design, open space, recreational areas and on-site amenities, landscape design, building design, facade, and articulation. That's something that's really challenging to regulate through zoning, but it's something that we will be able to regulate in this process. Things like transparency, if you have an architectural background, like having the number of windows that you have on either side. I mean, how many of you have driven down the road and seen buildings with no windows on either side of the building? And that isn't great, long-lasting design. They're going to have to look at their recycling and solid waste disposal, and then bicycle parking. All right, so this is a little bit of the wonky stuff, but previously, the multifamily developments were approved by special permit. And this is all laid out in Connecticut general statutes, and the Planning and Zoning Commission is very much constrained by these Connecticut general statutes. So when you're approving a special permit, the Planning and Zoning Commission is acting in its administrative capacity. So if multifamily is allowed in a specific district and an applicant applies for that multifamily, a special permit allows for you to condition that approval, to maybe make a few changes in the shape, sizes, maybe a little bit in density, but you zoned it for multifamily, so they can get multifamily. A special permit runs with the land. It has to be filed on the land records. And as I said, you can impose conditions, but there has to be a nexus to those conditions. They have to be related to protecting public health, safety, convenience, and property values. And with a special permit, a public hearing is always required. With this new regulation, an applicant's going to come in with their master plan and zone change. And there's a whole section of the Connecticut general statute that discusses this. And when the Planning and Zoning Commission is deciding on a zone change, they're acting in their legislative capacity. Therefore, they have the broadest discretion. The only things that they have to determine is that it has to be consistent with the plan of conservation development. And when they're making that decision, it's very rarely overturned. The site plan approval, which is what will be part of these new regulations, is they're going back into their administrative capacity, and they're reviewing compliance with the zoning regulation. There's no public hearing required. Of course, they can have one. There's a quicker approval process. So they will always, as part of the site plan, they're going to still have to look at all the things that they have to look at: waste disposal, stormwater, parking, buffer, landscaping, lighting. Those are the boxes we're going to tick off to make sure that they're following what's in the master plan. And that's when they're going to have to hire their experts to prove that they are meeting those regulations. Our other regulations still apply. Our affordable housing requirements will still apply. 15% affordable and 5% workforce, or they have to build that percentage offsite. The fee in lieu, however, we heard loud and clear that people did not like that. They didn't feel that it was fair. So that's being in this proposed reg, it's being removed. The conditions of the Pleasant Valley Residence Agriculture Zone down where Mountain Dairy is, the PZC could still require up to 35% of the prime agricultural acreage to be preserved because that is our agricultural area. Performance standards. There's a lot of performance standards in our zoning regulations that you're happy to look at. They're it's dense reading: stormwater, noise, erosion and sedimentation control, parking, lighting. Making sure that there isn't light spillover. I've heard a lot of comments regarding dark sky compliant fixtures, traffic and landscaping. And then we do have additional architectural design standards, and they're still going to have to make sure that they're meeting those as well. So in order to enact this proposed regulation, certain sections related to multifamily housing must be repealed. I kind of reviewed those before. We have to do some kind of technical things in our use tables. There's a zone called the Design Multiple Residence Zone, and that really is similar to the Planned Housing Design District. So we are removing that. We only have about 5 properties in town that are zoned DMR. Affordable housing, again, I discussed that. And then because of there are different setback and density requirements for the Pleasant Valley Agricultural Zone. Those will be removed, and the Planned Housing Design District will be used instead. So I guess in summary, the Planning and Zoning Commission has worked really hard with Tyke Planning and Policy as a staff, and it's been helpful for me actually to do these presentations because I've really had to dig deep and really understand these regulations. And I think what this regulation is going to do is it's going to allow a little bit of diversity within the housing that the planning and zoning is able to approve. Now it's sort of one size fits all, and it's really hard when you have different sites, different property with different wetlands or slopes, different types of abutting and adjacent land uses. So I think this is because there's going to be that discretion right at the beginning and a conversation going back to our planning documents. So I think that's an upside, I think. So the Planning and Zoning Commission is, they're going to have to really articulate what they want through hearing from the public. And the developer is going to have to do their homework. When they come to Mansfield, they're going to have to really understand what folks want. So with that, I've been doing a bunch of different public information sessions. We've been going to the different advisory committees. That's where I am right now. The public hearing opened this past Monday. We continued it because we knew that this is an important regulation where it's going to be continued to July 15th. And there's a solid chance it will also be continued to August 7th, but that will be discussed at the July 15th meeting. And then after that, the commission will decide on whether or not to adopt these new regulations. So again, from the Economic Development Commission's perspective, we'd love to have something in writing as part of the public hearing record. Let us know. Do you like it? Do you not like it? What specifically do you like or not like? Because it's hard to write these regulations. We're trying to thread the needle here. And so we really would like specific feedback. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing and I can take questions.
I'm gonna jump in real quick. Jennifer, are those slides available for us to go over?
Yeah, I will send them to Rosemary and she can distribute them to you.
That'd be fantastic. Thank you.
And the other thing is that there's a recorded, I did do a public information session last week, and that's recorded in on the on mansfieldct.gov/video.
Great, perfect, thank you.
Additionally, Steve, this meeting is being recorded, so including the
great.
questions raised by EDC members, that will be available on YouTube.
Lots to watch while you're folding laundry.
I'm gonna go through and make sure everyone gets a chance to speak. So I'll call on everybody one at a time so you can kind of get your thoughts together. But I have one quick question before we start. Jennifer, the difference between a master plan and a site plan?
Very different. Master plan is much more, it's high level. So you're not a site plan, you have elevations, and I mean, if you're going to have to do some of that in order to figure out what the property can bear, but you're not going to have to come in with your full stormwater management report, all the engineering. This is going to be high level. I mean, if you're smart, you're going to have pictures of the type of development that you want. You're going to have, road widths and things like that, but it's going to be subject to change, but it's going to have, after you go through that high-tech engineering, I'll get all your experts involved, but it's not to the degree of a site plan.
I guess my question then is, my understanding from your presentation was the idea was you want to have them do the master plan up front, and that's you gather all the feedback, and it's more discussion between like PZC and the applicant, and you kind of go back and forth on talking about stuff. But and the example I think you gave was having windows on the side of the buildings, because sometimes they just omit those and they only put them on the front and back. But you might not even know that that design element exists until you get to the site plan phase. And I thought what you said was the master plan is once it's approved, then the site plan is sort of just checking off that they did what they said they were going to do in the master plan. And
Well,
so
I
it seems
think
like you're
things
kind of
like-
making a decision without all the information.
Well, I think that certainly you can come in with a master plan that says you're going to have and say, I'm going to have, 20% transparency, right? It may not be like the windows, but you can kind of give an estimate. We want to, before the project is fully engineered, they're going to have to spend some money to do this master plan, right? There's just no way about it. And the more information that they do provide, the better off, the more successful they're going to be that their site plan is going to be approved in the end. But I guess the two stages, the conceptual review, and then even through that master plan process is going to allow for some dialogue. And that's what we want to allow for. So it's not going to have to be quite as technical as a site plan, but there will have to be some technical components. And if they're not showing those windows and the PZC wants those windows, then they're not going to get the zone change, So
Yeah.
I think what we're trying to do is get a good design here, but the Planning and Zoning Commission and town staff we're not architects or engineers, and we don't live in this financing market world either. So though the developers that are coming to us do. So there has to be a commitment to having an open dialogue and then developing a master plan. And I think that, that's the goal of this.
All right, I'm going to go through my screen and just call on everybody so everyone gets a chance to chat or ask their questions. Dwight, you're first on my screen, so sorry to put you in the hot seat, but do you have anything you want to bring up?
Just a quick question about how these changes relate to the timeline about the moratorium. Is that in effect until these changes are made, or can you comment on that?
Yeah, so our goal would be to get these adopted prior to the moratorium, the expiration of the moratorium. However, in your agenda packet, and the planning and zoning is considering the repeal and the new reg as separate applications. So what could happen, although I hope it doesn't, because we want to keep to that year-long time frame, is that we would just repeal the multifamily regulations. And then in essence, there are no multifamily regulations. And then maybe in September, then the multifamily regulations, the new ones, would go into effect.
So Les, you're next on my screen.
I don't want to keep people late, and I'm mostly trying to wrap my head around this from the Economic Development Commission perspective, and I'm not sure I fully understand sort of how to compare the two and from that perspective and make sense of it. So I'll just say that. And other than that, I'm like personally very interested in how we solve all these housing problems, and appreciate how much thought Mansfield puts into it and all of this work. And development thus far has been dense and thoughtful.
All right, thank you very much. Next on my screen is Nancy.
I think taking out the fee in lieu thing is fantastic. Because I think affordable housing is needed in this this town, and I think that's what people are asking for. So I think that's very good to take the fee in lieu out of. So yeah. Just like how much more land and how much more property can be developed. I guess there's much more than I even know of. So, I mean, that's just, those are my feelings, because like, I just see so much development happening now. Like, where's everybody going? And who are all these people that are going to be living there? Because then the single family homes, are they in good shape for the family of four to be living in after the college students have all lived there? That's my feelings.
So one interesting thing about this reg is that we have not done before is that if you're building over 100 units in any given location, the Planning and Zoning Commission can require the applicant to do a fiscal impact analysis. That's not something we've done, and generally we don't. The Planning and Zoning Commission doesn't necessarily get involved with a fiscal impact analysis. So, but that's something we're saying, you know, you're coming to the town to build all of these units. So you need to kind of tell us what do you think the economic impact is going to be, and, you know, where's your market? So that's one thing that we're asking for in these regulations.
I think the last person up here is Lane. I don't know, Lane, how your audio is, but if you have any questions, now's a good time.
I'm here. Can you hear me?
We got you.
Yeah, I zoomed in. It was the phone that was the problem. Jen, I just have two questions for you. One is, I'm guessing that these new regs didn't necessarily come out of whole cloth, and if they did, congratulations. But I was wondering if there were any precedent statutes from other towns that you guys had looked at to compile these.
So we've been working with Tyche Planning and Policy Group. They've kind of done, they work in towns all over Connecticut. These are a little bit based on, it's funny because I'm working with a number of different consultants with all of these different plans that we're doing, and FHI, I had them look at this reg and they said, this is like a village design district. It's allowing us to kind of regulate some of the things that you would regulate in a village design district without putting a village design district on the map. So there's different components, like the use of a floating zone that's been used in other areas. We do have a regulation similar to this on the books, I would in process, not in, and that's the mixed use center transitional zone. That's the zone that you all looked at a few years ago, but it actually never landed because they did not like basically the master plan and how they were demonstrating, you know, what they were going to put on that property. So there is, it is our attorneys looking at it to make sure that it's legally sound. And I think I don't think a lot of towns do this, but I think a lot of them would like to be able to do this. I just spoke with someone from the Capital Region Council of Governments. She said that that's something she wanted to. She was the former director of planning in Tolland, and she really wanted to do that in Tolland, but it just they weren't it's a new way of doing business, and it just didn't work for them at that time. I think they didn't understand it maybe, and I'm not sure what happened, but it didn't pass.
Okay. The second question is just on the getting rid of the fee in lieu things. Did anyone talk to like developers that have already built here and opted for the fee in lieu or things like that to find out if that, if that not being an option would have been a deterrent to them building here? Or was it basically just that it was unpopular and so we took it out?
Well, I think we had several conversations with the hub regarding the fee in lieu, and I think it's really hard to determine what the fee in lieu should be, and to kind of tie it to the development. So unless you any developer with the our fee in lieu structure, it was a bargain for them, frankly, to take that fee in lieu. So I think it's best practice not to have one location where all the affordable housing is, and it's better to have it kind of mixed throughout. And if you read literature and affordable housing, so I think that's what the Planning and Zoning Commission decided that they wanted to do.
Okay, thank you.
Was the objections to fee in lieu mainly because the amount was wrong? Like if the fee in lieu percentage had been a lot higher, do you think people would be okay with it if it was significantly increased? Or was it just the concept they didn't like?
I think it's the cost is one main thing, but then the town's not in the business of building housing. So right now we've got $5 million in our Affordable Housing Trust Fund, and it's going to be a heavy lift for us to kind of we're going to have to really think thoughtfully about this, and we are thinking thoughtfully, but it's going to take a decent amount of staff time and administration. And I think they felt we've got 5 million now. If it's a deal breaker for a developer, there's always a method to ask to change the regulations, and they can come in for a text amendment, and maybe they could come up, they're the experts, maybe they can come up with a formula that would work and would be palatable to the town. I don't know, but I think for now they just wanted to see it off the table. I don't know that door is closed forever. No, all regulations can be changed.
And then my last question is the one single piece of feedback that I've gotten from almost every single person I've talked to about the development going on at the Standard across from my office is how in your face it is and how close to the road it is. Which I know at the time it was proposed was the design goal at that time, was to bring things up closer to the road. But my impression from everyone that I've spoken with is that's not the preference of people in town. And so has any consideration been given to siting things further back from the road so they're a little bit more, I don't want to say hidden, but less in your face?
So that's what this whole zone is kind of designed to do, is you have to look at your context. For example, well, first, when people tell me that it's close to the road, I also think when you're driving down 195, you're like, whoa, this is big and right up close to the road, but it's further from the road than downtown Storrs buildings. And I know that sounds weird because you're used to slowing down, and downtown Storrs is sort of a place, but so like I'm trying for myself to reserve judgment, but that's kind of neither here. That's not answering your question. When they're coming in, one of the design considerations is they have to look at the setbacks, the prevailing setbacks of the other buildings of that neighborhood. And they're going to have to take advantage to kind of present that as part of their master plan. So if the Planning and Zoning Commission thinks it's too close to the road, they can deny that application.
I guess, last thought is, I think when we ask people in town what their thoughts are, they are referencing other things in town. And I think the prevailing way that apartments have been done up until the downtown is you can't see them from the road, right? So if you think about Renwood or Maplewood or Clubhouse or pretty much all the apartment complexes, you see the sign out on the main road, but you can't see them from the main road. And so I think the downtown is, you're right, it's completely different, and what's across the street is very much like the downtown.
Yeah.
And so I understand your analogy from there, but I think if you're asking a town resident, they're probably not thinking of the downtown, they're probably thinking of other apartment complexes throughout town. I think that was a big shift for us
Yeah.
as a town, so. I'm sure we have a lot more to discuss as a commission, so I think the next step for us is to set a special meeting where we can discuss, how we can draft a letter of response and questions we may have and all that kind of stuff. So I will work with Kathleen and Rosemary to try to figure out a date for everybody. And then Jennifer, if we have more questions in the meantime, we'll certainly reach out. But for all the members of EDC, oh, and I'm sorry, I meant to, before we end, Rosemary or Ryan, I know you're both on the call. Do you guys have any questions for Jennifer? I didn't want to stifle anybody from asking questions.
Ryan knows where to reach me.
I figured.
I do know where to find Jen. No questions at this time.
All right, great. All right, so then at that, I think we're getting a little late here, so I'm going to say, well, let's table any further discussion. We'll have a special meeting just to discuss this one topic. Let me grab our agenda and see if there's anything else on here.
And just, I'm going to sign off, but I want to thank you and make sure you get your comments to my office, Sandy Ferrand, before the July 15th meeting, because we can't accept any comments after the close of that public hearing. Okay.
Thank you very much. We'll make sure we do that.
Take care.
Thanks, Jennifer.
Bye.
The rest of the stuff on the schedule, on the agenda, we left on there more or less as placeholders. I don't believe we have an update on the Yukon Town Collaboration or the Cultural District, any updates since our last meeting, but we will have those for you. And I didn't want to take them off the agenda because then we forget to add them in the future. So that's why those two are on there. Does anybody have anything for the good of the order? Any last comments, parting thoughts? Or we're good? All right, we're good.
I won't be at the next meeting, Steve. I'm on vacation.
Okay. We'll make a note to that effect, and we will try to figure out a day for our interim meeting between now and then, because our next meeting is after the 15th, which is the last day to get comments in. So keep an eye out for an email from Rosemary or Kathleen or I with that. And with that, I would take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Dwight, is there a
I'll
second?
I'll
Alexa,
second.
all right. Thank you all so much. We're going to assume waving goodbye is your affirmative vote, and we'll see you all next time.
Thanks.